Britain and France say they are not ruling out any options in Syria, including a military-enforced no-fly zone. The deadlocked UN Security Council has again held a meeting on the crisis, with Turkey also pushing for a creation of a buffer zone. Our New York correspondent Marina Portnaya has the details.
The Security Council remains very much divided over how to deal with the Syrian crisis. The high-level meeting that was taking place in New York focused on the humanitarian circumstances in Syria right now and how they continue to exacerbate. According to UN officials, at least 229,000 Syrians have fled the country in the past 18 months, spilling over to neighboring countries such as Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey, and Iraq. This has, of course, made the circumstances very difficult for the neighboring countries. Turkey has asked the Security Council to consider setting up refugee camps inside of Syria that outside countries would safeguard. This is a suggestion that the Syrian government say they are very much against. Russia and China also have opposed it, saying that it could only create more conflict and violence. So clearly you have a very complicated situation here, but we did hear Western countries address the Security Council, their representatives calling once again for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to step down. Britain and France, the foreign ministers of those countries, today made a new call encouraging for more defections within the Syrian government and the Syrian military. The Russian ambassador to the United Nations, Vitaly Churkin, did address the Security Council and raise the issue of the fact that the unilateral sanctions that Western countries, including the U.S., Britain, and France, those sanctions that they've placed on Syria are only hurting the Syrians.
The sanctions imposed by the UN Security Council have nothing in common with the actual efforts to assist a settlement of the Syrian crisis. They complicate the lives of simple citizens and deny them the opportunity to meet their elementary needs and fully enjoy basic human rights. This is not only our conclusion, but it is also of an independent commission in Syria. We call upon nations who impose sanctions against Syria to immediately lift them. We view the efforts of some individual states to use pseudo-humanitarian arguments that suggest of either financial, material, technical, or logistical support to illegal armed groups as unacceptable.
There have been several strong statements in recent days and even in the past week. We heard that U.S. President Barack Obama indicating that Washington would intervene militarily into Syria if the Syrian government were to use biological or chemical weapons against its civilians. Britain echoed Washington's sentiments, while France has come out proposing for a partial no-fly zone to be imposed over Syria's airspace. This, of course, is something that has not been supported by Russia and China, but the U.S. and its Western allies have underscored as late as this meeting taking place in the Security Council that they will continue supporting the Syrian opposition and continue providing them with equipment.
RT's Marina Portnaya reporting for us there from New York. Now, for more analysis on the ongoing Syrian crisis and the UN meeting, we are now joined live by Paul Sheldon-Foote, professor at California State University, Fullerton. Thank you very much for being with us. So we have seen another UN Security Council meeting. Has there been any difference in the tone of the rhetoric this time?
It is unfortunately a repetition of what happened in Libya, where we have the United Nations being used to promote war instead of promote peace. We've come a long way from the time of the creation of the United Nations. Sanctions are acts of war. Permitting the support of terrorist groups to go into Syria or any other country are contrary to any reason for the United Nations. It's a question today whether it should even exist anymore.
Well, how possible is a negotiated diplomatic settlement in the Syrian conflict now that we've seen ethnic, tribal, and religious divisions in that country, and that this is no longer justified between pro- and anti-Assad forces?
Well, there's no desire by the West or NATO to have a negotiated settlement. The ultimate purpose of this exercise is to make sure that there's no competition in the Middle East for pipelines, such as by way of Syria, Iran, and other places. All these other things are excuses.
Now, you just mentioned that there is no interest in NATO for a negotiated settlement. Actually, Foreign Minister William Hague has said that a NATO-enforced no-fly zone over the country is not being ruled out. They could possibly go rogue even without the UN Security Council. Do you think this is a possibility?
Of course, it's a possibility. And they even mentioned, France even mentioned this with respect to the refugee camps that are being demanded by Turkey to be placed inside Syria and run by the United Nations. And France said, well, of course, if we do that, we'll have to have a large amount of military there to protect the refugees.
Let's touch a bit upon that initiative proposed by Turkey. How safe is it to impose a buffer zone in Syria, or is this just a pretext for increased foreign military presence there?
It's a pretext. It's still another way to divide and take over the country using the United Nations as your vehicle.
Now, if you look at the calls for foreign military intervention in Syria, they've become more vocal lately. You just mentioned France and also the UK. Reiterating the words of the US, are we seeing another Libya-type situation here in Syria?
That playbook worked in Libya. They want to try the same playbook until it doesn't work anymore. I'd like to remind everyone also that there used to be a United Arab Republic under Nasser that had Egypt and Syria together with the idea of a pan-Arab unity. Morsi has gone a long way. When Morsi shows up at the NAM meeting in Tehran and tries to destroy any possible cooperation among non-aligned member countries, it's outrageous. And by the way, many of these non-aligned member countries have American military bases in them. How can you be non-aligned and have American military bases in your country?
Good point there. Now, here's the question. We have these quote-unquote non-aligned states going against Syria, Syria taking offense to Mohamed Morsi's comments. How do you see this all playing out with seemingly the entire world against Syria right now? It's almost everybody's against any type of a solution.
So far, it's been a breakup of the country. The PKK, the Kurdish organization has been given autonomy by the Syrian government to be one step toward fighting against Turkey and uniting Kurds in Turkey and in other neighboring countries. I think that people in the West would be very happy if it ended up in a massive civil war and a breakup of the country and the lack of competition in pipelines. The claim that they care one bit about humanitarian concerns is a gross lie.
All right. Appreciate your thoughts. Paul Sheldon Foote, professor at California State University, Fullerton. Thank you for being with us.